One of the most traditional things that people think about cooking a steak is that you sear it on the outside and it holds in the liquids. But so many studies have shown that actually searing a steak doesn't make it waterproof. In fact, the opposite. When you sear a steak, it loses more water. And when you sear a steak and you cook it in the traditional way of half the cooking time on one side and then flipping it and half the cooking time on the other side, it gives you a very unbalanced, unevenly cooked steak. What we're aiming for in a perfect steak is perfectly medium rare from coast to coast, from one side to the other. So we're going to do an experiment today where we cook one of these big fat ribeyes that I've got with the traditional method, searing it on one side, turning it over, searing it on the other side, and cooking it half the time, versus the BBQ Dragon method, which would be frequent flipping of every 15 seconds or so. So let's go ahead and go to the grill and toss these on. This steak is going to be cooked in the traditional method, and I'm going to put it over here in a sort of a middle heat area. And then this steak I'm going to cook with the BBQ Dragon method. I'm going to go ahead and throw it on a fairly hot area of the grill. Now I'm going to start my timer because I think that we're looking for about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes on each side for this traditionally cooked steak. Now I want to point out, I let these steaks warm up to room temperature before I began to cook them. So it'll give them a shot at being as evenly cooked as possible. Alright, we've only been cooking for about 15 seconds and I'm already going to start flipping the BBQ Dragon steak. So here we go. Boy, that thing's barely even started to cook, but here I am flipping it. Oh, what a bad way to cook a steak. Let's see. We're actually at about 3.5 minutes on one side of the traditional steak. We're going to flip that thing. That looks super. Yep. Just getting a nice char on the hot side of the grill. And now we're going to start our clock again for another 3.5 minutes on this side. And I'm going to flip the BBQ Dragon steak yet again. Another popular myth about cooking is that you don't want to poke your steak with a barbecue fork because it's going to put a hole in it which will let all the juices out. But steaks are not balloons. You don't pop them and let all the juice run out. It's not going to make any difference in the final result. And in fact, you're going to have so much better facility at moving your meat around that your meat's going to come out better in the end because you're using the barbecue fork. Don't worry about popping your meat. We're just at 3.5 minutes, which seems about appropriate for that steak. So we're going to pull off the traditionally cooked steak. That looks just perfect. And now we're going to pull off the frequently flipped BBQ Dragon steak. And we'll put them on the plates. And now of course we're going to let our steak rest for about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It continues to cook after you take it off the grill. And secondly, the juices are unevenly distributed because of the uneven heat distribution. So when we let it rest, your juices distribute more evenly and they don't all pour out when you cut it, which looks dramatic but creates actually a drier piece of meat. So let's come back in 4 minutes. Okay, so here we are at the moment of truth, the big battle between traditional two-turn steak cooking and the BBQ Dragon frequent flipping method of cooking a steak. Let's cut first into the traditional steak. There we go. Now, if we can look at that steak, look at how the outside, nearly a 1/4 inch on either side, is quite well done. And then the middle is actually a little bit too rare, depending on your taste for steak. Now, let's cut into the BBQ Dragon method. Now there is a steak which is cooked perfectly from one edge to the other, pink. Let's take even another little cut into it here. Look at that. That is a perfectly cooked steak right there. And you notice there's no difference between how the steak is cooked at the edge and how the steak is cooked in the middle. It's beautifully rare throughout. In fact, let's take the two steaks here and compare them. Can you see that, how nice it is? The steak that's cooked traditionally has a too rare middle and a too overcooked outside. The BBQ Dragon steak is perfectly rare throughout. From coast to coast, it's a rare to medium rare steak. This is by far a better method of cooking. It's been proven by science, proven by BBQ Dragon. Thanks for cooking with us.